Good morning. We are joined today by Dr. Imani Price and Leon Van Bibber, Mr. V. And today's topic is a very serious topic. We're going to be talking about suicide prevention, and having those tough conversations with people who you think may have suicidal ideation, which is what we call it, or people who struggle with suicide as a way of coping skills.
Yeah, so a little bit about the statistics. According to the CDC, in 2022, 49,449 people died by suicide, which was an increase from 2021 of 2.6%. And I think all of us mental health providers would agree that going through the pandemic contributed in some way to the increase in our statistics.
Mhm. I think for a lot of people, there's several reasons. Some people, it was the socialization. For some people, it was, the feeling of being locked in. But either way, it did increase the rate of suicide, especially for completion. And if you're recognizing those signs, or you see some of the risk factors, I think discussing some of those can help people if they want to help their loved ones to either get help or learn how to talk to them, or those key signs that they can either take to the clinician to help their loved one.
Yeah.
I believe some of these dynamics have changed as we've gone through COVID and as we've also gone through this whole fentanyl phase that still seems to trouble us.
Mm.
Something that I've noticed is that people that um, had thought about suicide or had ideations, but also used drugs or medication to help combat some of their depressive thoughts
Yeah.
ended up getting stuff from the streets that had fentanyl in it and then inadvertently ending their life with not really planning on it, but just really looking for an escape. So I think now we're looking at a bigger dynamic, and not just someone having a thought about it, but then also all these new factors that are out there. And even when we start to look at the internet and we're looking at bullying and we're looking at all these factors that now are coming into play, that suicide before, as we look back traditionally, it was uh, didn't have all these other factors involved, didn't have the internet the way that we have it today,
Mhm.
um, and all these different societal factors that are playing in that have also been changed. So I think that's really another thing to look at is
Yeah.
what do we also do about all these other, caveats and things that are happening? How do we approach those as well with somebody that is experiencing suicidal ideation
Right.
and really connect?
I know for most people, having the conversation is hard. It's hard for us too.
Right.
It's difficult asking a person pretty directly if they have considered hurting themselves. I was going to say harming, but harming themselves or taking their own lives. I
Right.
know that when I was first in the field, that's not something we said directly. We said, "Have you thought about hurting yourself?" Which is a much more mundane kind of way of asking a person, have they thought about suicide? But now it is, we ask directly,
Right.
have you thought about killing yourself? Because that's a different conversation. And
Right.
I don't expect everyone to be comfortable with it, but I hope that it does become something that more people can ask, because as people are looking to provide support for their loved ones, you have to know where they are.
Hmm. I think it's important also to understand that asking the question will not, push a person into taking their
Absolutely.
lives. Ideation is different from ideation, intent, and plan. That trifecta where they have a solid plan and they have the implementation to do it, and they're just waiting for their time to come. But having that discussion can sometimes alleviate, whatever emotional or sometimes physical pain that person is having. But asking the question is the big thing that opens the door to the conversation that's needed.
Yeah. This to be.
Yeah, I would agree. And as a clinician, asking that question, or asking that question in general, even not being a clinician, it's hard, right? It's like, how do I just ask this person, are you thinking about killing yourself?
Mhm.
Mm,
And but just like you said, doctor, that opens conversation. That gets them to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. Let's talk about this for a moment. And it's hard to be vulnerable, even in that sense, right? So,
mhm,
Right.
how do we get them to understand that it's okay? We're here, and we're going to manage this.
mhm.
We don't want a permanent solution to a temporary problem,
Correct.
and
Mhm.
that when we know that's what suicide is, and while that problem for them probably feels like the end of the world for them, that there is no other answer. That's where we as clinicians step in and really approach that subject and find out, well, what's really going on? Let's talk about that. Why do you feel this way? And a lot of times, uh, we start to look back at, maybe there's a relationship issue, an individual issue,
Yeah.
and then we can really start to expand on that. So just asking that question, yeah, it's a tough question to ask. It's
Mhm.
not easy, right? Um, but at the end of the day, it's what needs to be done to really start to understand where that person's coming from, and really, is there an intent? Is this
Mhm.
a fleeting thought? Where are we really going with this?
And if it's just ideation, then discuss it as ideation. It's almost normal to have that passing thought because your
Yes.
circumstances are overwhelming or life has become too much for you and you don't want to do the moment. Like you said, have a
Mhm.
permanent solution to a temporary problem. But that ideation can be normal if you have a lot of stress or a lot of pressure. And men and women handle stress and pressure differently. And I think that when people think of suicide, they think of the way men who are more likely to complete suicide, which is
Yeah.
more of a violent way. So they'll do guns or something that's let's say messier.
Hmm.
Whereas women are more likely to attempt something that's a little bit
Pass.
gentler. So
Mhm.
maybe taking pills or
Mhm.
something that's not as quote unquote messy. But opening the gate to that ideation, that passing thought. A lot of people try to hide it because they think when they tell us we're gonna, have them committed or put it away because you have that thought, but that thought can be discussed or rationalized, or like you said, Leon, that having that conversation so the person feels better, or they can have some solutions to that relationship, or if it's physical, talking about going to the doctor to get, like we had a conversation before we started. Pain management can be sometimes difficult. So,
And that is another topic, but it's still part of the same. And interesting you say that, because pain has a real good way
Yeah.
of influencing someone to end their life, especially when it's chronic pain and they feel that there's no way out. And I see that a lot, with military members,
Mhm.
mhm,
um, or people that are, in a terminal state but still functioning. Of, um, someone, let me find an example here. So you got somebody like Kurt Cobain from Nirvana, that had these stomach issues, from what I was understanding, and just these chronic pains that he couldn't escape.
mhm,
And the way out was, well, no one can help me, and I'm tired of this pain, so this is the way out. This stops it all. And that becomes a really hard conversation with somebody because they're in this chronic state of pain all the
mhm,
time. So what do you do? How do we combat that?
right,
And other than pain management and keeping somebody in a comfortable state, I don't really have that answer. I don't know if there's any amount of words that us as clinicians could give to somebody to take away a physical ailment.
right,
Um, but that's another topic. It's hard. I've talked with service members that have this chronic pain of whether it's something that they've gotten when they've come back from Iraq. They don't know how they've gotten this. They don't know, you know, I was beside burn pits and now I've got this this lung issue, and I'm taking all these other medications to do these things. So it can kind of get convoluted, but yet it's just another factor of what do we do? What else can we do as clinicians? You know, even if it's pointing them in another direction to get some other kind of help.
Well,
Right.
yeah, one of the things that I was thinking about, I mean, when you were talking about Dr. Austin, that asking the question does not direct a person to hurting themselves. That's an important thing. And I want to bring it up again. Many people have those fleeting suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a friend or a family member and you're asking a direct question, one of the things we have to encourage you to do is be calm
Right.
and non-judgmental and listen to the person as they're telling you
Yes.
whatever it is that they're telling, because it's a difficult thing for a person to talk about or be honest and straightforward about. And the way we respond to it
Mm-hmm.
often determines how honest they're going to be with us. And the
Mm-hmm.
more honest we can get them to be, the more help we can get for them.
Mm-hmm.
And with all of the complementary treatments that there are now, I think some of the chronic pain issues, although they may not be foolproof, there are so many more options other than just medications
Right.
and surgery that are considerations too for individuals who are having severe pain. So being able to hear a person's story and get
Mm-hmm.
them to, like Mr. V was saying, to some support that might be able to offer some more treatment options if it's pain is
Right.
important. And if it's emotional pain, then absolutely being
Right.
the battle buddy to walk your friend into counseling
Right.
and help support them and not tell them, oh man, your life is great. You shouldn't be thinking that way. People don't want to hear that.
No.
Let me just put that out there. Nobody wants to hear that.
It's important to respect the moment. It's their pain, whether it's emotional or whether it's physical, and that can be. It's not the question that you ask. It's you're correct. It's how you handle the moment. And
Yes.
so if that person has, let's say they learned this as a coping skill from their family members, and so they seen family members handle their emotional, physical pain with, trying to take their life, that person can see that as a way of well, that's how my mother or my father or my brother, that's how they got over their pain and it stopped. But that it's almost like a delusional line of thinking because, as you said earlier, Leon, that person is making a permanent solution to this temporary problem and not seeing that their family members that did it before them, they're not here anymore. All they're seeing is the pain stop. And
Right.
that's why it's important to respect that moment, because for that person, that moment is really important. If it takes you to that point in life, it's a really important point, and not to demean it or, yes, that's stupid. Why'd you do that? That's really not a good response.
That's an awful
It's
response.
awful response.
And I'll bring up a situation. I've been involved in many situations with suicidal soldiers.
Hmm.
One situation was an individual jumped into the Thames River attempting to drown and was pulled out. So when that happened, I the individuals, they came and got me, and of course medical was there too. So there's me and there's medical. So medical's doing what they want to do, but one young man said to the individual, "Why did you do that? You almost hurt other people." And I took my arm and moved the individual to the side and just continued to talk to the person who was in distress. In that moment, that wasn't the thing to talk about.
Right.
Uh, we saw that the person appeared to be physically okay. So now let me talk about the emotional piece. Let me
Hmm.
ask what's going on. How do I support you? What can I do?
Hmm.
And yeah, when I turned around and looked, like everybody was around, but they were far back
Right.
because I had it handled.
Right.
And I think that in the calmness, so there weren't all this brass running up on this person. They stayed back. So when you say respect the moment, that's what I thought about, is that moment. I'll never forget that moment, because that person opened up so much about what made them jump in the river, that we were able to do some problem solving, not at that moment, but the person was stable enough to then go to inpatient and go to the hospital and get some more support. But it's important what we do, because what we do can really help drive a situation for the better if we do it right.
I think, first of all, I want to encourage people here to like, share, and subscribe, please. I also want to talk about and I won't go into great detail, but Kevin Gates, if you look him up on YouTube, he talks about, they call him something with suicide, but he's talked, several hundreds, if not thousands of people off of jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge. And there's this one particular person who, in that video, it shows him just standing there talking to the person. And it's a black guy that's standing. He's standing on the other side of the bridge. So all he has to do is just lean back and fall. But he talks about how people want to be listened to, or how people are in that sensitive moment. They just want to be heard. And there's one particular person who, he talked to his father before he got there. He was on the bus crying, trying to get there. He said he was looking for anybody to just look at him and recognize that he was in this emotional pain. And he even had like one person stop and ask him, "Can you take my picture?" And in that emotional pain, he stopped himself to take a picture of this person, even though he's in this stress. And so, we ignore the moment if we get absorbed in ourselves and make their moment about ourselves. Again, it's really important to recognize their moment, because that can be the shift between that person wanting to end their life or wanting to continue to live.
And that's very true. When we're talking with somebody, it's often like a job interview. You've got one shot to really connect. Because oftentimes there's not a second. If you don't do great at that job interview the first time out, probably not going to call you, right? And it's the same thing with this. You've got one shot to connect with this person and really connect with them, find out where they're at, and hopefully reel them back in. And it's finding that spot, allowing them to be able to have that voice. And just as other times that we've talked here, having that voice and letting them know that they matter.
Absolutely.
Is oftentimes the key to getting them to kind of look back and go, "You're being heard."
Right.
Without saying you're being heard, really getting them to connect. And oftentimes that's the challenging part as clinicians. Many people are like, well, how do I do that? How do I truly connect with? Listen. Just listen. Be in that moment. Just like you were saying, Dr. A, be in that moment.
Yeah.
And while that may seem like forever while you're doing that, because you're trying to help that person, how do I get this person back in? I don't want them to hurt themselves. How do I get them off that? How do I walk them off that ledge? And while it seems like forever, 30 seconds may have passed by. So we have to be able to also, as clinicians, pause in moment of crisis. And that's something else that I like to also talk about with my clients, is learning how to pause in crisis, being able to ground yourself for that moment before we ever get to having those ideations. How do we pause in crisis? What does that look like? We'll come back to that. But getting them to see that and understand that we're pausing with them, and getting them to understand that, hey, you're not alone. What's going on here? And once they've understood that, you're there. And it doesn't always work that way. We all know that. There's always something that can change that, and there is no perfect answer. But when we do listen and we do provide that support and that lifeline, it often does change that. There is no one size fits all with this, and we can't always save everybody. I think I don't want anybody to get the wrong idea that, oh, all you got to do is connect and it fixes it. No, that may not be true either. You have a better fighting chance when you connect.
Yes, you do.
but oftentimes we can even arrive late.
Hmm. I think
But
an
I
important, I'm sorry.
no, but I completely agree with everything we're talking about here. Is that connecting, understanding where they
Mhm.
are in that moment, and being able to pause in crisis. What do you think, Doctor P?
Dr. A had something she was going to say.
Oh, I was going to say, sometimes it's not catching the person in the moment. Some of the warning signs, especially if a person is definitive, is them beginning to give away prized possessions,
Hmm.
their favorite game or jewelry, or just giving away things because in their mind they've made up that I don't need these things anymore. And if you know that person is just really out of sorts, sometimes people become happier when they've decided to take their life because they understand it and
And that,
remember in their mind that this pain is going to stop again, whether it's emotional or physical. And so they begin to become happier. And in giving their things away, that's another warning sign. Or that happiness when they've been in this deep emotional space is another sign. And so sometimes it's not the person admitting that I'm going to do something because if they made up their mind, they don't want to tell anybody because you'll stop me.
yeah. Hmm.
But if a person is doing these things where it's out of sorts and you know they've had that ideation, that's an important time to step in as well. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Knowing those warning signs, and I know one of the things that we're always listening for are those absolutes, the always, the never. It's
Mm-hmm.
always going to be this way. It's
Right.
never going to get any better. This is going to be this way from now till kingdom come. No one knows how to help me.
Mm-hmm.
Those kinds of things. If you're hearing someone that you love saying those kinds of things, be on alert.
Mm-hmm.
Start the connection. Start just checking in, seeing how they're doing, what's going on with them, talking to them. You may also see some isolation from other people,
Mm-hmm.
mood changes. So many, what we would say would be telltale signs. The
Mm-hmm.
person is just different than you've always known them to be.
Right.
And that's either they're more elated or they're more depressed.
Right.
Um, Look out for those kinds of things because those may be times when the person is starting to have some ideations. And if we can get them at the ideation stage
Mm-hmm.
before they have any plan or intent, we have a much better chance of helping to save their lives.
Right.
Agreed.
I think even drug withdrawal, I think, should be put in there because a person going through withdrawal, their thinking, their cognition or their thinking is really off because it's the body craving that thing that they can't have, and so that can be something that pushes a person into suicide, or a person who is despondent because someone has just left. That can be another person, another thing that can push a person. And so again, just knowing, or for our young people, some like Leon opened up with some of the social media things where social media
Yes.
is different from when we grew up. It's a really important social aspect for our youth right now, social media, and it's just when we were growing up, it was people in your neighborhood that bullied you. Now it can be the whole world that bullies you. And can you imagine the pressure of
Hmm.
you post a video and you think, oh wow, this is me in a happy moment, but the feedback is you're ugly or that's stupid or you can't dance, and that person's moment is broken. And so young people don't think I need to go talk to my mom or my dad or someone because I'm hurt. They think life is over because no one likes me. And so based on a video or that social media interaction, that could be the introduction to this is not worth living anymore. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure, especially
Right.
for our young.
Right.
Mhm.
Or even for our elderly, getting older and joints and pains and losing loved ones and your friends are dying off. It can seem, logical to just take control of life by ending your life. And so watching out in those areas as well. So it's not just, our youth or our older people or males or females. It's that in ideation or intent is generalized to all populations.
Yeah.
male, female, doesn't matter.
So we've got to wrap up in about 5 minutes. So, what are some of the things that we want to encourage the audience to do in order to be part of the solution in the prevention of suicide? I mean, we've talked about some things, but I want to throw it out again for us to, add some more points. Offering support, but not promising privacy. That's
Right.
one of the things that I want to say. We can't be private about this.
Right.
Now, I can be private and take you to get some support,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't keep it to yourself. Don't promise
No,
anyone that you're going to keep this thing to yourself,
no, no.
because in loving on them and in helping them, not keeping it to yourself, but helping them and guiding them to get support is how you help save their lives.
Mm-hmm. Or if the person does have the ideation with intent and plan, take all the sharp objects, take the guns out of the house, take their pills away if they have a prescription that can be lethal. Take those things out and stay connected to the person until they get through that moment, and recognize again that respect their moment, but removing those things that can help ease that person into that thought
Yeah, absolutely.
be
Mr.
really
G?
helpful.
I want to kind of talk about the younger ones for a second, and touching back on what Dr. Alston was saying with social media, um, and even with young adults. Social media has become such this broad spectrum of how you should live your life. And many people just don't understand that a lot of it is just for someone to get likes. It's for someone to
Mhm.
try and make money. And oftentimes those videos are not really what you're seeing. A lot of times people cannot see the forest through the trees. And by
Mhm.
that I mean, is that video even really them? What type of filters or cameras are they using to really portray an image that just really isn't even them?
Mhm.
And they want someone else to live up to that standard, or that's what people should be. So you got this false sense of reality. And then you've got someone that's very impressionable not being able to meet that standard. And it's not even really a standard because the narrative is fake. So I think when we're dealing with our youth and our teenagers is having conversations with them too. And I know we've talked about monitoring, how much they're online and what they're doing. But more so over is communicate with them, talk to them. Hey, what's going on with your day? Really, kind of peek into that. And um, it's not just about monitoring how much time they have online or how much time they're playing games, but find out more about what they're actually doing with it.
Mhm.
And if you notice changes in them, or are they making lifestyle changes that are just not quite right? So it's also being in tune with those around you. So I tell people really take a look at the big picture. Know know your audience and know those around you. And if you see things that are just not so normal, talk about it. Ask more. Tell me more about that. What does that really mean to you? What does that look like? Because technology is so vast, it makes it difficult. So that's one of the things that I really look at now is how do we compete against technology? It's hard.
Very hard.
It is. The last thing I want to say is a community.
Mm-hmm.
Having community, encouraging whoever's struggling to become part of a community. And that's a community of whatever. It can be whatever their interests are. So being part of a community is actually a protective factor for people committing suicide. Once you get them into a community setting, I'm doing my female veterans group, and I always have a topic that we're going to discuss, and it usually never is discussed because the community decides what is going to be talked about. Somebody comes with this issue, and then that's the issue, right?
Right.
And it should be that way. Whatever it is that they bring, someone brings, and it's important to them, it's important to us. So community is important. And I hope that any of you who are listening, if you have whoever you have in your life, help them to the best you can not feel alone.
Mm-hmm.
provide some support or a check-in. It doesn't have to be a whole lot, but
Mm-hmm.
let them know a community exists and that you're part of that community for them.
Awesome.
All right. So that's our topic for today. And thank you for being here with the Empowered Mind. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video. Give us comments below. Let us know how you liked it and if there are other things that you would like us to discuss. So join us next week for another compelling topic. God bless you, and we will talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.